Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
Lastly, I remember you mentioned a psychology book before in which the LGBTQ was known as a disorder, but then they removed it from the book for no reason. Can you talk about this again?
Yeah, so there's this thing called the DSM. I think there are 5 volumes now. There are five releases of this DSM. The DSM is basically the the standardized book that contains all psychological challenges or disorders and conditions, personality disorders and whatnot. In DSM 1, 2, 3, and then if the DSM is at 5 now, then 1, 2, 3, and 4. If it's at 4, then it's 1, 2, and 3. All contained or considered homosexuality as a disorder, as a mental health problem, and they considered what's now called transgender. It was called gender identity disorder. So they were considered illnesses. Now, in the latest version of the DSM, they were both removed. But when you research why they were removed, this isn't the first time a case is removed from the DSM. You have other cases, right? But those conditions that were removed because of more updated scientific information, with the exception of these two. Homosexuality and gender identity disorder were removed not because of scientific findings, not because of research, but because of lobbying. So, I mean, we've always considered this to be a problem.
So the scientists know, they know it, but despite that, they still removed it because the general
The
majority
pressure. The pressure. It's not necessarily from the majority of society. It could just be from people with money.
like social pressure, or
No. It can be from political pressure as well. Lobbying. Lobbying, it has nothing to do with society. It has to do with people who have a lot of power and a lot of money and influence who put pressure to get people to do things.
I've heard people say that asexual and aromatic people are a part of the LGBTQ community, but I don't think these two specifically are against Islam, although I wouldn't say the same for the rest of the orientations I've heard of. Are we just going to talk about lesbian and gay people?
So, in my talks, I'm talking about people who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, transgender, and whatnot. I'm not talking about people who are asexual. So, asexuals, as we spoke about before, asexual is something that the Quran mentions, right? And it goes back to some sort of physiological or biological abnormality. Right? There's science behind it. It's not a feeling. It just is. So no, I'm not putting that category in the LGBT alphabet, even if they do.
And then how should we respond to Muslims that are gay or are okay with it in a way that they might understand?
Um, I mean, how can you connect with them? And how are they approaching you? Are they approaching you? So you have some questions to ask. But what I'll say is that we need to do our best to make sure that we don't isolate them from our social circles, nor do we isolate them from our communities. We do ask them to respect our values and not to go about talking about it. Just like we expect people not to come in the message and say, hey man, I was partying last night and drinking and I was at a strip club. It's disrespectful to the place. Now, if you tell me this outside or in my office, I'm not going to take offense to that. But if you're saying it in the masjid, I mean, this is the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to respect the boundaries. And nobody's perfect, and the people who pray here aren't perfect. So we don't want to isolate them. We want to make sure that they have a space and they feel welcome here, and that they see us as a source of support for them, not for what they do, but support. We can support them through their challenge and their situation, and that we are very well-meaning towards them. Right? We want what's best for them. So that's how we have to go about doing it.
So it's best that they don't publicize what they do.
Yes, they shouldn't, because the Prophet ﷺ says, كُلُّ أُمَّتي مُعَافًا إِلَّا الْمُجَاهِرُونَ. All my ummah will be well. They're okay, except those who publicize their sins. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ says, and among publicizing one's sin is to do something, a sin at night, and then go about saying, hey, I did this and I did that. Right? Talk about it loosely. Now, if you're going to someone for advice, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about somebody who's going about and casually talking about their experience. Yeah, man, yesterday I was with this person. Yesterday we drank, and yesterday we went to the club. And no, the Prophet ﷺ saying that publicizing it is a major sin in of itself.
So you should only talk about it if you're attempting to get help and
Exactly, right?
okay.
And also ask the question, can this person really help me?
So what should I say if someone asks what are my views on LGBTQ and do I support them?
So I would respond by saying, I believe in the traditional structure of family, and that sexuality is only healthily expressed when it's between a male and a female in the confines of marriage. So that's a very politically correct response, and it's not meant to instigate any kind of friction, nor is it meant to be offensive. So it's a very neutral statement that is clear in terms of what we believe and why we believe it.
So theoretically speaking, if you after you give that statement, if the other side, asks you to elaborate on why we think that way, are we supposed to, you know, elaborate, or do we just let them know, we're not that person's not educated enough to?
Sure. I mean, if you're not educated enough, you feel like you don't know how to answer the question, say, look, I don't know how to answer that question, but I'm happy to refer you to someone who could answer that question. You can give them my email and let them reach out to me. If you know how to answer it and you feel comfortable having that discussion, you feel like this isn't going to become a heated debate or unhealthy debate, go for it, right? But if you feel like, no, this person is, they're trying to pull my leg, they're trying to agitate me, they're trying to get me angry, say, look, man, I gave you my position. I'm not interested in having a debate.
If Islam is against LGBTQ community, why are there mosques and communities that support them since there's a united opinion on it?
So I want to be careful. We're not against the community. We disagree with the community. Doesn't mean we're against them. The Prophet ﷺ came to call people to La ilaha illallah. And he was sent to a community who was worshipping other than Allah. But that didn't pin him against the community. Right? He was very friendly to Abu Talib. He honored another companion, not companion, another Arab who died a polytheist. He didn't accept Islam. He honored him because of that person's friendliness towards Muslims and his support for Muslims. So we're not against anybody. But what happens is the ones who disagree with us, they start to create this dynamic of us versus you by aggressing towards us. And it leaves us no room except to respond with justice, right? So we're not against the LGBT community as a people. We don't agree with their idea, with their beliefs. We don't agree with the lifestyle. We see it as immoral and haram and wrong. It's not how God created us. But that doesn't mean we are against you now and we're coming after you. If they start attacking us, then we have the right to defend ourselves, don't we? We do. Right? And can you what was the second part of the question?
So why are there mosques and communities that support them since there's a united opinion
Well,
on it?
who's running those mosques? Are there Muslims who do drugs, who drink alcohol, who fornicate, who steal, who lie, who rob, who are abusive? That they're not going to define Islam. And so masajid are the homes of Allah, but they are run by people and they're established by people. And in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the hypocrites were always trying to create problems. A hypocrite is somebody who professed Islam, but internally they disbelieved in it. And so they would try and cloak themselves with the garments of Islam in order to try and get inside the community and cause problems. What we would call today an informant, a spy. Right? So a group of these hypocrites they built a masjid. And they built the masjid for the purpose of creating problems in the Muslim community. Right? And so they called the Prophet, said, Ya Rasulullah, we built a masjid, we want you to pray in it. Because if you praise in it, it kind of formalizes that this is a masjid. So the Prophet said, okay, I'm coming. And the Prophet was walking towards it, and Allah revealed verses. He said, those people built the masjid to create problems. So there are people out there who will build masajid to try and cloak their vicious and ill intent, their vicious plan and their ill intent. They cloak it with a masjid. But the purpose is to cause problems. So just because there are people who build masajid and endorse this doesn't mean anything. Even if an imam comes out and says, this is all okay. No, it's not. It's not. You're one person, and the entire Muslim community from day one until now unanimously agrees that this is haram. How can we differ when it's very clear cut in the Quran? So that's a dishonest person.
So when this person's saying there's a united opinion on it, that's the united opinion is that being a part of the LGBT community is not okay.
Hmm.
But what they're saying is Islam is against the LGBT community, although that's not entirely true. That's not true at all.
So I'm just kind of rewording it to be a little bit more precise. I'm
Okay.
guessing the person means what I'm saying,
Yes.
right? So we disagree, passionately disagree with that lifestyle. We see it's haram, it's immoral, it's unethical, it's harmful, and it's not allowed in Islam. But again, that doesn't mean we are pinned against them. I can disagree with you without making it an issue of I'm against you. As I gave you an example of the time of the Prophet. The Prophet disagreed with his uncle Abu Talib, who was a mushrik, a polytheist. But the Prophet wasn't against him as a person.
So since everyone is, entitled to their own agreements and disagreements, why has this become such an issue? Why are people kind of assuming just because we disagree that we, are
The LGBT lobby is creating this narrative. They're creating the narrative. If you don't support us and accept us as we are, then you hate us. No, we don't. You're making that dynamic, not me. The war against pride. No, you're creating the war, not us. It's like Russia. They justify their invasion of Ukraine by saying that there are neo-Nazis there and they're a threat to us. They created a framework to justify their war. So it's the LGBT lobby, and I say lobby, not community, the lobby, that's creating this war and and making this narrative that we are against them and that's why they're acting that way. No. You're against us. And you've transgressed against us. And now it's time to defend.
so because they're kind of making statements or speaking for us, that leaves us no choice to
That's what they're trying to do. But we Muslims, we're not gonna fall into their game. We're gonna look at what Quran and Sunnah tells us, and we're gonna act according to that.